Thanks, Drew. Thank you so much for having me. And I am so partial to coaches. I just said, so for those of you that just jumped in, you might have missed a few minutes ago, I said that you just can't get a nicer group of people together. So I love to go to coaching conferences. And of course, I said yes when Drew asked if we want to do this, because I understand that when you sell anything for the first time, especially if you sell professional services, it's really tricky to figure out all of those steps. And I actually have been a client of executive coaching. I have spent money on it myself in the past and benefited so much. And so coming at it from all these different directions, I was delighted to have the opportunity to talk with you about entrepreneurship for coaches, and really any questions that you want to ask. I have been a salesperson and a recruiter my whole adult career life. I thought I was going to be a professional musician. I went to Rice University in Houston because they have a very good music school, and I thought I was going to be a professional musician. And I finished that degree, but decided I didn't want to do that professionally. And I was like, what am I going to do? And my first job out of college that I got through temping, remember when jobs were, it was the tail end of when you would actually look in the newspaper for advertisements. I saw this entry level recruiting position, and I didn't really know what it meant, but I desperately needed a job. And I found that I liked interviewing people. I really enjoyed being a recruiter. And from there, I went on to consulting sales, technical sales. I started my first company, which was actually cold calling for other people, because I don't believe anyone if they say they love cold calling, but I liked it and I was very good at it. And so when I was looking for a way to work from home, I had children, I wanted to get off the road. I was looking for, what do I know how to do that people will pay me? Well, it turns out people will pay to cold call because they don't like doing it. So I've had a lot of ventures since those early recruiting days that have been centered around different kinds of sales, consulting, and lead generation. So I've solicited many different industries. I've called on many kinds of executives, and this theme of recruitment and interviewing, i.e., qualifying clients well, has been a theme my whole adult life. And so that's how I find myself here. I'm very predisposed to liking to work with coaches and believing that coaching is a really important service in the world. And I want you to be equipped to get out there and do it. So, Drew, what else should I mention that you know about me?
We'll talk about some of the things you do now later on. Um, let's just get into it. I'm going to ask you the first question, but I want to encourage everybody to throw their questions into chat. You can send them directly to me if you want to. You can just put them in chat to everybody. That's completely fine. Bringing Catherine in for this Q&A, the Q part is the question part. Catherine's got the answers, so we do need to ask her some questions. I'm going to ask you one of the questions that I got from one of the participants last week, and that is, it's very easy to do lots of things that make you feel like you're doing sales work,
Hmm.
but realistically, I'm actually avoiding doing the tough stuff. How do you get started? Like,
Yeah.
how do you not waste time on things that don't matter, was the phrase that this person used.
Okay. So I don't know, of course, what every item on the list was that they are saying they're doing instead of selling, but I'll give you a couple categories of how I think about it. And then please ask questions, because we'll take questions as we go. So I make sure I'm really delivering what lands with people and what you want to get out of this call. When I hear that question, Drew, I think about the difference between sales and marketing. And let me tell you my definition, because it's not everyone's definition. My definition is that the activities that create brand awareness, things like posting on social media, even LinkedIn, right? I'm not, doesn't have to be doesn't have to be any particular channel, right? I do a lot on LinkedIn because that's where a lot of my buyers are. But it could be any kind of posting, or even commenting on people's things, or answering questions in Reddit, or um, writing things, writing future content, writing blogs, things like this. They're actually all important tasks. I would lump those in the marketing category, meaning that as you educate people out in the world using the words that describe how you help the right people for you to serve, which is gets into target market and things I know we'll talk about later, Drew. When you do those things, those are important tasks. So I wouldn't say they don't matter, but I would say people will do those because they don't want to sell. And what I describe when I think of selling, the term that comes to my mind is revenue generating activities. And the way I define a revenue generating activity is it is initiating connections with people or following up from introductions. And I'm going to use air quotes because I teach people how to do this so that they can do it with confidence and according to their own values and not feel sleazy and cheesy when they do it. But it's chasing. Okay, I have it in air quotes, but it's chasing people. Chasing means initiating, and you're going to have to ask multiple times and more times than you'd probably like. An RGA, that initiating with people, that revenue generating activity, that is the work of sales. Sales is also having the actual discovery calls. Perhaps as a coach, you give a short laser coaching experience for people so they can see what it's like to work with you, which is a great strategy for people to get to know you as a part of your sales process. I'm not talking about that meeting. I'm talking about the work you do to get those meetings. That's people's least favorite part, I think, Drew. What do you think about that definition of RGA and my summary of what people think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the RGA piece is very specific. It's also the hardest part of it. And it feels like I'm keeping busy posting to LinkedIn and posting tweets. I feel like I'm doing my thing. I'm selling. But I always wonder, like, does anybody ever, I mean, I could ask you the question, does anybody buy anything from LinkedIn? Like, does anybody see a post on LinkedIn and think, oh, that's interesting, I should track that person down and see what offerings they have? Or is it just really a marketing awareness piece?
I think both. I think both can happen. Both have happened for me. What I will agree is that it's a much longer play. So what you have to do is commit yourself to whatever platform you're going to be on. You have to show up regularly and not just you do your post, but what is, I would say, as significant, possibly even sometimes more significant than you having a clever post is you following the right people who are people that are influencers in your space. They're people you respect or people who also serve a similar client so that you're seen among their followers. Your thoughtful participation in those conversations is a way to gain more followers because they'll say, oh, I like how she answered that. I like how he answered that. They'll go push the follow button. And then if you're making posts regularly where you invite people to come to a webinar, you invite people to download something, you invite them to get to know you, then you take the conversation away from LinkedIn because it can turn into what I call a discovery phone call. So I do believe it works. It is not as fast as straight up asking someone if they want to have coffee with you and asking if they've ever tried coaching. I mean, that's a faster thing. It's also a scarier thing for people.
Yeah. Okay. So great questions just come through to me. So if posting on LinkedIn is just marketing, and I understand the concept of RGAs, where do you even start?
Yes. So what I do, this is we're jumping to concrete steps. Okay. So thank you for that question. What I do is most days of the week, Monday through Friday, most Mondays through Friday, I have a recurring reminder at 7 a.m. on my calendar. So I'm going to be very specific here about what I do. Okay. Because I'm telling you this works. I have a post. And the reason I know what I'm going to post is because every few months I sit down and I actually write out what the themes of the topics are going to be. And I can always ignore my own calendar. But if you want to write more regularly, you actually need to give some thought to what are you going to write about? Because if you don't do that ahead of time, it's going to just be another obstacle to actually doing the work. So planning a little bit about that content ahead of time is very helpful to me. So for example, the month of March, I talked the entire month of March about referrals. I just decided I lead a referral group in Houston, Texas. I talk about referrals as a module inside my How Good Humans Sell training community, and I rely heavily on referrals in my own business. So I decided the entire month of March I was going to talk about referrals. That sounds crazy, but what happens is creativity creates more creativity. So I didn't know ahead of time what I was going to say for 20 times. I just knew I was going to talk about referrals. And then as I saw what people engaged with, it gave me more ideas. Okay, so think of a loose arc. Okay. Then you notice who's liking and you notice who's commenting and you make sure you're following them. We're still on platform. All right. You ring the bell. You track their name. If you have a database of some kind or a Excel spreadsheet or some way that you want to keep up with who you'd like to know better and who you eventually want to have a call with, you make sure you're following them and you comment on their stuff. A thoughtful contribution. Hey, great post. I like this. I also think this. People notice who comments. Okay, I can tell you who commented on my post yesterday because it feels so good. It feels so good, right? So people notice that. And so if you're genuinely interested in them, you care about them, you do that. And then after, and this is what I do, after you've been a good citizen, if you think you can help them, then you would do a direct message inside the platform or write an email if you have their email address or they've shared it. And you would say, I really enjoyed your comments about XYZ. I'd like to get to know you better. Would you like to get together in a 15-minute call and get to know each other? And I'm being that vague because sometimes they're going to be a referral partner for you. Sometimes they're actually a possible client for you. I don't know the circumstance. It depends case by case. But what I don't do is I don't push connect and then suggest that we meet because I don't like when people do that to me.
Oh.
I want to follow you. I want to follow your content and I want to see what you're about. And just to give you an example, and this is a very real example, and I hope it's not disheartening to you all because it's an example about how some people buy quickly and some people buy slowly. But I mentioned to those of you that were on the call early, I shared that I had just finished a package of executive coaching that I had purchased. I followed that coach for 1 year. 1 year. Before I went on my own to their website, booked on the Calendly, scheduled myself for a discovery call, and basically from his experience, it just looked like I popped up. I'm telling you, he posts YouTube videos periodically on LinkedIn, and I had been watching them and following them for 12 months before I was ready. And so, Drew, to answer the question, like, does it work? Yeah, I spent a nice chunk of change with him. And that's where I followed him and felt like I got to know him. And then I actually initiated. In that example, I initiated when I was ready. And I was a very easy sale at that point because I had already decided pretty much I was going to buy.
Right. And I think what you raised there is an interesting point is that, and I've done this, so I'll own up to this, is, I'll post on LinkedIn for a few weeks and then think, oh, this isn't working because I'm not being deluged with inquiries from the world, right? And so I'll think, well, that's just not working. I won't bother doing that anymore. And what it sounds like you're saying is you need a sustained, consistent presence over quite a long period of time to actually
Yes.
see the results.
Andrew, I like to post. The more you get practice, the easier it is. So I don't want you to hear me say I do it most days, Monday through Friday, and think I can't do that. That's fine. Pick 2 days. Pick 2 days. There's a financial advisor that I really like and respect, and he only has it scheduled for himself 2 days a week. He doesn't even look at people's comments or reply on the other days. He just does it on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so much better than not doing anything. I mean, it's working fine for him.
Right.
So I think picking something and sticking with it for a long time is important. But just to finish that story, Drew, about the power, the reason that 1 year example is so powerful is because I have already referred 3 clients to him. And I had such a positive experience that I will use him again. I call him my coach in the present tense as if we're still working together, even though we're on a break between services.
Mm-hmm.
But I have this great affection for the time I had with him. And so I cannot begin to tell you the number of thousands of dollars of business that I will eventually refer to him as a happy customer. So was it worth it for him to make those YouTube videos? Yeah, I think it's going to end up being, I mean, I'm not kidding. Just he's an MCC and he's been doing this a long time. And so, probably over the rest of my adult life, if you trace back all the referrals of the referrals, I mean, he'll probably earn $100,000 just from me.
Mm-hmm.
right? Because
Yeah.
I like to tell people when I have a good experience. So when you find a Catherine who likes to share the good news, that's what happens.
Yeah. There's got two questions. One's a very practical question, then I've got a question that somebody just sent in. So the practical question is, do you use like an automated system like Buffer or Hootsuite or anything like that to do your social postings, or are you literally going on and doing them manually?
I do both. It's a great question. So we use Buzzsprout. No, Buzzsprout is the podcast tool. We use Hootsuite.
Okay.
And for my corporate pages and Facebook and Instagram, I have outsourced that, and that's automated. I do my own LinkedIn manually. And the reason I do that is because I want the flexibility of changing my mind about what I said that theme was going to be, or responding or resharing what someone else has done. And so that feels challenging to me to pre-schedule. But things like, we're going to announce this marketing event coming up, or we're repurposing, these articles that we thought were great. Those things can be scheduled, and that's easy.
Okay, awesome, thanks. And somebody just asked again about the names of the tools. The ones that I'm aware of are Buffer, Hootsuite, and I'm sure there are many others like that, but they allow you to sort of preload your postings and then they automatically do it for you. They're relatively inexpensive, and it sort of takes the pressure off, because you can sit down in one session and load up 10 LinkedIn postings or 10 tweets and then just leave it, and it just takes care of them, when they go through.
Did you notice this, Drew? Because I just noticed in the last few weeks that in LinkedIn you can pre-schedule manually too. Did you notice this?
I did not know that. There we go.
Yeah. So anyone can. It's not about having LinkedIn Sales Navigator or any of the more advanced features. When you get ready to post, to push the button to post, there's a choice to schedule. And so this is only one post at a time. But what will happen is, I'm an early bird. I like to go to bed early and get up early. So a lot of times I'll write my post quite early, but I don't want to push send yet, because part of any social media's algorithm, as I'm sure you all know, so I'll be brief about it, but there's a whole magic about how many people see it and comment within a certain number of hours. And so it's not advantageous to you to send it out at 5 a.m, because a lot of people who would be your followers aren't on it yet. But I want to write it when it's convenient for me. So a lot of times I'll schedule for it to go out later in the morning. So I might already be on client calls or training, but I actually wrote it earlier and I scheduled to send that same day. So even inside LinkedIn, that tool is available now.
Amazing. And Jackie just posted in chat that the challenge there is you can't edit the draft until after it's published, though. So just to be aware.
Maddening. Totally agree. It's so hard to even change your picture. Super crazy that this is Microsoft we're talking about and it's that difficult. I agree, Jackie.
Yeah. Okay, questions are coming in. Great. So please do keep them coming. We'll get to as many as we can. So one of the questions that I had sent to me ahead of time, I just want to honor the fact that somebody asked me this question. I think it's a great question, is how do you differentiate yourself as a coach? There are, obviously there's a huge demand for coaching services right now. There's also a growing number of coaches coming through. How do you stand out from the crowd? And maybe you can talk about that from a marketing perspective and also just from a direct sales perspective as well.
Sure. So that's such a good question. I wish we had 6 hours. So I'm going to do my best, and please ask clarifying questions if you want me to take it a different way or interrupt me, Drew. The quote that comes to mind when I hear this question is, I think of this man, and if you'll type this, Drew, in the chat, because I have trouble talking and typing at the same time. There's a man who is the founder of a marketing training firm that's called Brand Builders. Excuse me. Brand Builders. The owner of that agency is called Rory, Rory Vaden, with a V, Vaden. Super cool name, hard to say. Rory Vaden. Rory Vaden said, "You are best equipped to serve the person you used to be." Let me say it again. You're best equipped to serve the person you used to be. And I think this is actually true for anyone who sells anything. And how much more is it true of coaching? Because coaching is in the business of transformation of the person. So what do I mean by that? Well, to the question, Drew, of differentiation, it could be that even though you might want to eventually coach over in this industry, maybe to get started, if you're in early stages, maybe you coach back to the industry you came from in corporate because you know a lot about that space, right? That could be what it means. It could be that when we say you're best equipped to serve the person you used to be, it could mean about your own values, or it could mean about your attributes. So,
Interesting.
so an example, let me give you an example of that. One of the things that is true of me, which if you follow me after this on LinkedIn, you'll see this is the case. I'm talking more about the intersection of sales and personal development than I used to, because I've come to understand that selling well is not just about knowing the steps. That is an important component. But you could know all the steps in the world, and if you don't believe that you deserve to experience success, if you don't feel confident, or you don't believe that you as a human being, deserve to make a big mark in the world and have a very meaningful life, if you don't believe those things fundamentally, you're going to struggle in sales, because the risk taking part and how you can frame or reframe getting no told to you and facing rejection, those things are buffered by areas that can be addressed by personal development. But I am a reluctant person to personal development. I have a snarky personality. I'm married to a skeptic. I mean, he's like a professional skeptic. I'm not kidding, right? Drew knows him. And so, like my contrarian spouse, we make fun of things, when no one's watching. So I have historically been very suspicious of the personal development industry. Well, a lot of what has happened to me in the last few years has helped me have increased confidence to raise my prices, to figure out my niche. All these things, they've come by way of personal development. They've come by way of coaching. They've come by way of certain podcasts. They've come by way of paying attention to certain books. They've come by way of learning to be a good goal setter. They've come by conferences. Okay. So I'm having to confess that. I'm having to change that and pivot that. Well, what does that mean? It means that I'm uniquely equipped to help a skeptic think about the role that beliefs play in their sales success life. Because I can say, yeah, I used to think it was about having a very clear value proposition, mostly. I used to think it was about just these habits around selling, mostly. But what I've learned is this. So what it means is I can watch for comments, statements, listen carefully, and notice people who share those same attributes. And that is a way that helps me stand out, because as I write about those things and share about those things, it's making there be more brand clarity about me compared to other sales trainers. What else, Drew? Is that helpful, or would you like me to go in another direction?
What's interesting about that is you said that to me last week when we talked, and you said, being a coach for the person you used to be. And of course, my mind immediately goes, and for those of you who may know me a little bit, I had a first career in IT. So that's where my mind automatically goes, is, senior IT folks, managers in IT. But what I love about what you just said is that that's not what it's about at all. It's about finding your sort of kindred spirits in terms of attitude, what's important to them, what they post about. So people that have, roughly the same set of shared beliefs that I do, I love that. Although I don't think there is a LinkedIn search filter for skeptic, sarcastic people. I don't think that's on
there. But you can follow hashtags that are things that those people follow, right? So there are ways to get to that. I'll give you one more example. And Drew, we didn't talk about this in our prep time, but I'll throw it in here. Like another thing that's just a piece of trivia about me when you think about who to serve. So in my sales training community, I mostly have people who are selling for the first time because they've come out of corporate, they're entrepreneurs, and they're what I call the owner seller. They're the owner of their business, and they are not big enough yet to have someone who is a full-time salesperson for them. So they are in the classes to learn to get better themselves. Okay. Well, I'm an entrepreneur too. I mean, I've been that person. So I love serving that person, and I can listen and I hear certain things when I'm having one-on-one conversations with people where I recognize myself in certain ways. One of the things I'm also very attuned to is I'm very attuned to how people feel about money, because I grew up in a family where money was scarce. Money was something people thought about, not thought about, although they probably did that too. And the wealthiest person I knew, who was actually an extended family member, everybody was bitter at her because when her spouse died, she inherited money from him, from his estate, and she didn't really work outside the home, and everyone was jealous of this person because they didn't think she deserved it. So what I learned about money was, it's not fair, and people who have it don't deserve it, and it's hard. You got to work hard to get it. I mean, all these beliefs. I am telling you, 16 miles away, I can smell what someone thinks about money because I know, because I was that person. Right? So there are these attributes, there are these examples like that where you think about where you are in your own journey and what it's given you and equipped you to notice about others. That is a way to carve out a space.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Awesome. Thanks. That's amazing. So the next question is going to be an opener. Does cold calling still work? And what are the alternatives?
Okay.
It's a great question.
Yeah, it is a great question. So I do think cold calling still works, but I don't think there's really much reason to only cold call. And what I mean by that is what's shifted in my professional career from the time I had that cold calling firm for 15 years. I had that business from 2002 to 2017. Okay, so that tells you how recent it was. What's happened that's really accelerated from the teens of the 2000s to present is that people use their cell phones for everything, and numbers are forwarded, and you don't have as many landlines. And now post lockdown, there's just so much movement of people not ever wanting to return to the office in some cases. So it is truly more challenging to get someone's real number and to successfully reach them, because the number that is on the website might be a Google phone number. It might be something that gets routed around. It might be really set up exclusively just to receive messages. We just don't know. Whereas when I first started the cold calling business, you would go through a switchboard, you would ask for someone's office. If they were a C-level executive, you would get their assistant and you would have a conversation with their assistant so they would tell you what to do to get a meeting. That's what we would do. It's just not always like that anymore. So while I love phone calls, I do not call people who are not expecting my call. I always message them first. I email if I have their email address, asking them for a meeting time, and I tell them the reason for the meeting. And I invite them to say yes to that. Or I do a direct message if we're connected on social media, specifically, usually it's LinkedIn. So I try to get it preset. And that's tying back to our earlier point, Drew, about the RGAs. Like, that's why you'll never run out of things to do for revenue generating activities, because whoever you want to meet with, you're asking them, you're using that time to initiate and ask for the meeting. Then you call. So let's say you send an email and they don't reply. Part of what you've said in your email, if you said, if we don't connect by Thursday, I'll also try to give you a call and see if I can catch you that way. So if you put yourself on the hook by saying, I'm going to follow up next, they know you're serious. They need to say yes or no to you. Of course, they're free to say no, but you've created an accountability system for yourself now because you've given yourself a little homework, which is on Monday, I sent the message asking if they wanted a meeting. And I said that if we didn't connect, which is a nice way of saying if you don't get back to me, but it's a nicer way, than saying that. If you say, if we don't connect by Thursday, I'll try to call you. I'll call you and see if that's a better way to catch you. It's a diplomatic way to say, you need to let me know one way or the other. Now, that might sound scary. Some of you might just be like, I can't believe she said we're supposed to do that. But if the email is very pointed as to how you can help and why you want to talk, then it's their decision, right? It's their decision. And they're free to say yes or no. And you actually would rather they say no than you be wondering. So you actually want to follow up with a call and go ahead and leave a message and say, hi Drew, it's Catherine Brown. I sent you a message on Monday asking if you want to get together. And the reason that I wondered if you wanted to is because I've worked with a couple other financial advisors who've had great success working with my coaching program. I'm really partial to advisors. I've been following you on LinkedIn for a while. And I wanted to know if you wanted to have a 15-minute call to talk about whether you think coaching would be right for you. This is my name again. This is my number. I'm going to send you another message after I leave this voicemail, just so you can reply and let me know you got this. And if you want to schedule, my Calendly link is on there. Thanks so much. Hang up, turn around, send another message.
Okay. It's interesting, isn't it? Because you know, the idea that if you have sort of pre-qualified because, you know, like you said, you know, I've worked with other advisors, which also gives the whole, like, you know, so other people are getting the advantage of working with me. Maybe you would like that as well. How, what kind of help is available? You know, how do I learn how to write an email like that? Because, you know, they're not easy to write.
Mhm.
Sorry, it's easy to write an email. It's hard to write an email that actually works. Like, what kind of information is generally available around that kind of thing?
Sure. Thank you, Drew. Well, so I have what I call the multi-purpose template in my book. So I have that right here. Let me grab it. The first half of this book, How Good Human Sells, the first half of this book is about beliefs required for selling. So it's about mindset and what you think about sales. Sales is something we do for someone, not something we do to them or at them. So it's addressing that 16 different ways. And then the second half is qualifying questions, how to be persistent without feeling like a nag, and how to write emails like this. But I'm also, I'm not trying to just sell books here. I'll tell you the components of that email. The components are a personal greeting. So, Drew, maybe you can put this in the chat while I'm talking. A personal greeting. And then know that when they're opening it, you need to have some kind of hook like, why me? So, because you're soliciting them, because you're inviting them to do something, they need to understand that you are soliciting them. I loved your comment about such and such. I've been following you for X period of time and really appreciate your leadership in X. Okay, this part has to be why me? Because this differentiates whether someone keeps reading or they just delete you, like we delete people who ask for a get to know you coffee when I don't even know if I want to know you. Like, I don't like that. You better address that concern by making it very personal. So it's got to be the why me, and then you state from your perspective why you, right? So what is the value, what we call a value proposition? How do you help people? And that's 1 to 3 sentences about how you do what you do. Again, if you go back to the Rory Vaden quote from a little while ago, if you're focused in an area that you know a lot about, this could be part of that answer, right? It could be, I spent X years in corporate and I'm really attuned to the challenges that leaders experience in financial services, right? I came from Bank of America, whatever, right? So there's a little bit about you. Then there's the invitation. So what are you wanting? I always recommend people do a short call. Don't ask for a lot. You're really just looking to start the relationship. So we're talking about 20-minute phone call, maybe even a 15-minute phone call, quick chat. You can even call it a coffee chat, whatever's that right first step for you. And then the call to action is the end. And that's where you're saying, here's how you book with me. And if we don't connect, I'll try you this other way. I feel very strongly about this last piece, Drew. As you know, I cover this in coaching a lot. It's really important that you decide what you're going to do if you don't hear from them. Because the problem is that people don't get our messages, and you're going to have to ask multiple times. And if you don't create a reason for you to check with them again and try again, if you don't set that up for yourself, you're going to be left wondering, did they see my message, but they're ignoring me? Do they think I'm stupid? Do they think I'm too expensive? They've gone out and researched me and decided they don't like me. You've opened up the space for all of this wondering, which can be eliminated where you can, if they don't get back to you, you can say, I don't know why they didn't get back to me, but I said I was going to get back to them on Thursday. So now I need to, because I'm a person of my word. And when I get back to them on Thursday, I'm going to change the way I reach out, and I'm going to leave a message that way. And, maybe you have an invitation to a free coaching call. Maybe you've started a blog. Maybe you have developed a following on TikTok, and you say, if you're a TikTok lover, you can follow me on this channel, but you share something with them, right? And this is part of that process of cultivating a relationship. But that's pretty much the formula for the email, which sounds like a generic list, but Drew, it, like, when you fill in all pieces, it's highly personal.
Yep, yep. A great question just came in a few minutes ago. So if you're just building your business through networking and referrals and it's going okay, are you sort of missing out on kicking it to the next level? There's obviously a limitation around networking and referrals that you're going to hit eventually. What do you think about that idea that you're sort of missing another gear, if you like, if you're just using networking referrals?
Yeah, I think it depends on your ambition, right? It depends on how much money you want to make. So and what I mean by that is that when you're fairly early, you don't have a lot of case studies for people to refer to, and you haven't had a lot of clients yet, so you're going to have to initiate more than you'd like. What happens is you get up to this certain level where you have referrals coming in, and you have to decide if that is accomplishing your professional goals, because nobody can tell you how much money you should want to make. But for me, I still have a combo, even after many years of doing this. I still have a combination of initiating and referrals that come in, because I want to go ever higher. And so what I have found is that the referrals keep me at the same level, and I'm very grateful for them, but they don't on their own tick me up to the next level. I will say I am crazy about referrals for the purpose of coaching, though, because and really, for that matter, all professional services, because when you sell something where there's not a product to see, when I can't demo you the software,
Yeah.
it's so powerful to have that warm introduction to someone else. And I would say, if you're going to rely on referrals, you should really double down. And what doubling down means, it means to develop a strategy where you say, okay, I have learned that these are the common characteristics of my favorite type of clients. What other industries or consultants sell to that same type of person or company? And can I build a relationship with them, so when they're selling and they hear that their clients, and prospects have certain needs, they refer me. So I'll give you a quick example. I get a lot of business from marketing agencies, because when people are doing different marketing tactics or building a website, that's when people will say things like, yeah, I mean, I hope this works to bring in leads, but even if it brings in leads, I mean, right now I've got 10 outstanding proposals and they haven't closed. And so I hope we can convert them. Like, stuff like that really happens. People say stuff like that all the time.
Yeah.
And then that's when my marketing partner would say, well, if you're having a challenge with the selling part of it, I can make an intro for you. There's somebody I follow that I like. And they go, really? And so I get a very significant percent of my referrals from different types of marketers who are also having conversations about generating leads, but they're coming from a different angle. So you have those too, right? They might be strategy consultants, or it might be DEI space, or learning and development people, or training managers, or there could be just all kinds of titles. But those people could be deliberate referrals whose relationships you cultivate, as opposed to just thinking simply about client referrals.
Okay. This next one's interesting. It reflects back on something you asked earlier on. Whenever I think about what you call revenue generating activities, there's a little voice inside my head that talks me out of it. What comments or suggestions do you have for that?
Yes. I think that the fact that you can say that that it talks you out of it is kind of this existential thing that you've already brought up, which is that you have an inner voice that's talking to you. And so I would say you have to name that your inner critic, CRITIC. You have to say, that's my inner critic, and understand that your inner critic is a liar. Right? This is part of the essence of imposter syndrome, right? Is that we think we're not enough. And by the way, almost everyone who's not a narcissist thinks they're not enough. I mean, Drew and I have joked about it, because I think he hung the moon. He thinks I hung the moon. And he's like, no, I think you hung the moon. I'm like, no, I think you hung the moon. And so we're all surprised by that at some level. I think that our outside doesn't always match our inside. And so I think practice the coaching that because of what you do for your clients, and you have to practice coaching yourself, where you say, what am I believing is true? What am I believing is true? And when you get enough evidence that your coaching has made a difference in the lives of people, and that they're transformed because of working with coaches, you can tip the scales, where you start to feel like you have enough external evidence that tells you that the inner critic needs to shut up, because the outside proof that what you do makes a difference starts to stack up.
Right.
It's a battle. Okay. It's a battle. I mean, I have a whole morning routine where I'm trying to take big, brave actions to take my business to another level. And I have to self-coach myself all the time, even though I teach this stuff, because the level of risk of who I'm reaching out to develop strategic partnerships, to ask to work together, I've leveled up. And that means that I'm in uncharted territory where I don't want to be rejected. But the alternative is, if I don't choose to do that, I'm definitely going to stay where I am because I've already proven that I know how to do that.
Yeah.
Right? So if I want it to be different, I have to do that self-coaching to get to another level. But
Mhm.
Drew, I've spent a lot of time talking about this. What else would you add to that?
Well, I mean, I think the thing for me is that certainly, so when I started my business, and you don't really know anybody, and you don't really know where to begin, and somebody says, "Okay, well, who else have you helped?" And you're like, "Well, you're kind of the first person." But that's not really true. And you look around you, and you start to get reinforced by this relationship. And some of the people that have helped me along the way are on this call, and I will forever be grateful for them for the encouragement, support, giving me early work, trusting in me to do things. And you just got to get started and get a little bit of a momentum going. And once you've got a little bit of momentum going, it sort of, carries itself to a degree. But then you get into, your frame there. So, play small, stay small, right? If you think that one client's enough, then that's what you're going to get. One client is enough. And, I think if you want 10 clients, then you start to think a lot bigger. And Laurie asked a question in chat. She sent it to everybody, so I don't mind mentioning Laurie's name. She said, what happens if you get too much work? I mean, this is a
Mm,
frightening prospect, right? I'm so concerned that if I do this, but I hate saying no to people. And
yeah.
so sometimes I'll look at, what work we've got coming in, and I'll think, okay, we can't really take on anything else right now. So therefore I'll stop doing any sales and marketing,
Mm,
which of course it's just like a muscle. When you stop doing that kind of activity, it's so hard to get it going again. What do you think about that? My
mhm,
roster is
mhm.
full. Should I still be out there spending an hour a day doing sales and marketing work?
Yeah, maybe not an hour a day, but I would not turn off the spigot, because not only do you get rusty, but you also just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I'll use real numbers. When I had my lead generation company, when I cold called for people, the biggest we ever got was we got just under $900,000 a month in revenue. Okay,
Hmm.
so I was just sub 1 million. One client, one client of that was 200,000. Okay.
Interesting.
So most people have this. They're unevenly distributed where they've got a corporate, right, that represents a lot. And so my spread I was at a risky proposition because my spread wasn't even. And so you need to look at that because that's a risk. And then also you just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, someone's business can be bought, they can have a transfer, they have a life crisis, they have a health crisis in the realm of coaching where they have to drop out. We cold called for firms, if we were really successful helping these tech companies get business, they would be acquired. And the bigger acquirer often had a different lead generation partner. And so basically we lost the work after we got them positioned to sell.
Hmm.
Stuff just happens, right? So I don't think it has to be an hour a day, but I wouldn't turn it off completely. I also think you have two alternatives. I think it's very alluring to have a wait list. There's nothing wrong with keeping a slow drip on the spigot and saying, I have these resources to market to you, in the future, because you don't know who's going to say yes or not if you continue initiating. So don't decide for them. You have to keep trying. And then there's people will wait, right? And if it's urgent, you can refer it out to people you trust. You could develop reciprocal relationships with people. You could develop referral fees with people. Those are all possibilities. The other thing too, Drew, is you could use subcontractors. And so
Yeah.
when you find people, I'm helping a woman right now. She's actually a clinical psychologist. She has a practice as a counselor, and she wants to work in corporations educating corporations about and destigmatizing about mental health issues. So she's going to have some offers in corporate. And I said, what are you going to do if they want to buy counseling packages? What are you going to do? And she's like, I've got to find more counselors. I'm going
Yeah.
to find people to sub under me that I trust. And so there are growth alternatives. One other quick story, Drew, you would know this person, but there was a woman that was an event planner who was in my community for a long time, in my How Good Humans Sell community. And she's doing great. She took off some time and is building her business, and I don't see her as often. I had her come back and speak yesterday to the community because she was sharing what she had learned. And here we are in April of 23, and she said, I'm fully booked until 2025.
Wow.
And she's hired 2 employees. She was a solopreneur. She has 2 full-time employees that work for her
Yeah.
that she's hired in the last couple of years. And she said, we said, what are you doing when people have needs? And she said, well, we're still doing an intake and finding out, is it a huge association conference or is it a small deal? Because they can do a little bit of help you stuff here and there. She just can't take big clients. And now she's looking at, how can I monetize if I refer this away from me? And it's just a wonderful problem to have. So I would ask yourself, is that really what you're afraid of? Or is it just, is this a pass to not have to keep doing what you don't like doing anyway? And, we see that too. So that might also sometimes be the case.
Yeah. Okay. I've got 2 more questions that we've got time for. One of them I'm going to ask you to sort of respond to fairly quickly, which is, how do I learn to like sales work?
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I don't have a lead generation sheet for this, but I'll have my contact info that will be the last slide we'll share. And I actually have this sales manifesto that is from my client's mouth, all the things that we list that sales are, that are affirmations about reframing sales so that you believe it is for people and not to them or at them. So it says things like sales is the successful selling is the path to everything I want with my business,
Yeah.
right? Sales is helping people, sales is loving people, sales gives people jobs. It's a journey. I mean, it's a journey to practice that, and it's a journey that's worth traveling, because even if you make enough money to hire someone to sell for you, if you don't adjust your feelings about this, you will create a negative sales culture in your company, even if you joke about it. And it's not helpful, because it's sales requires taking risks, and we want to support people, and we don't want to undermine them by showing our own nervousness about putting ourselves at risk, because it doesn't build a positive culture.
Yeah. And I don't know if you ever remember, you gave me this analogy about going on dates. And you
What did I
said,
say?
you said that this is many, many years ago, but you said, sales is like going on dates. You have to go on dates to figure out if there's a fit. Maybe there's a second date, maybe there's a third date, maybe you get engaged, maybe you get married. Who knows? But if you don't go on any dates, then you're not going to find a partner. And of
Yeah.
course, a functional relationship benefits both people. And so, the sales call or the meeting is the first date. It's the coffee date to see if there's a fit. And maybe this is going to be the best day of their life because they've found somebody that can help them with a problem that they've got, and you're the person that can help them fix that. And I do quite like that.
Well, the other thing I really like that has changed, and this might be another part of answering, I know you told me to be fast, but I promise this will be helpful. The other thing that might change your attitude about selling is that when you start to decide that any interaction you have is an opportunity for you to serve, even if they don't work with you right now, it's really shifted things for me. So because because I'm 51 and I have been a professional for so long, I have so many professional friendships. And what it means is that even if I find out that the person is really truly not a great fit for me, or they're not ready, I just almost always have a book, podcast, or a person that I can suggest to them on the call. And so even if we part ways, I feel like part of my brand can be that I was generous, and that they had a positive experience, and they're going to tell someone they had a positive experience, which might result in a referral. And so if you adopt this posture that every sales interaction is not about me getting you to work with me, but understanding if that's a fit, it shifts something, where then it's weird, because it is like that confident person on a date, where when they don't seem too needy, then you're more attracted to them, right?
Yeah.
Because you're like,
Yeah.
oh, you're confident.
Yeah.
So I think thinking of giving in that interaction, and not like that every conversation is about convincing. When you have that mental shift, it really frees you too.
Okay. Awesome. I love that. The last question is an interesting one, and we can both have a run at this. The question is, because a lot of people on this call have gone through certification for the EQI and EQ360 assessments, which you're very familiar with, obviously. And the question is, at what point do you introduce that? Like, at what point is that the thing that gets your foot in the door, that you use these assessments, or do I hang back with that information until I learn more? What do you think about that?
Well, that's a great question. I think I would kind of do an A/B test. And what I mean about that is, like, sometimes I would write about it and sometimes I wouldn't, and I would see if I could tell what got me traction. But what I wouldn't do is I wouldn't use the names of the assessments. I think they're weird names. I'm a huge fan of the EQI. I've taken it 3 times. I personally think self-regard is a very important characteristic for great sellers. So I'm quite familiar with it, but I think it writes weird, it spells weird. People don't know how they're supposed to say it, and it's just a tool in your toolbox. Like, you're the person they're buying, right? So what I would do is I would talk about attributes of the subscale. I would talk about why it's helpful to understand yourself and your team. And then later I would say, well, I use a tool to do that. That's probably would be my inclination, but you could talk about being skilled to actually measure emotional intelligence in your A/B test. That's the A, and the B is to not reference the tool, and see what happens. And maybe some people will be attracted to one or the other. But it's sort of like me saying, well, I have these great tools and templates, and I'll teach you how to qualify with the 5 magic topics that I teach. And if I lead with that over and over and over again, people are like, what are the 5 magic topics? What they're going to buy is they're going to buy a sales philosophy. They're going to buy the fact that they can believe they can get better. They're going to be attracted to the way I teach it. And the tool is only part of that. That's my thought, Drew. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, my experience is has been that you don't do that too early. Now, having said that, I've never tried A/B test emails around the EQI because and this is so fascinating, because my belief is that you shouldn't bring it in too early. It's interesting what you say about the name, and of course the old name was even worse, but the new name, I'm so used to it that it's just part of my language. But I've never
But you understand that your clients don't know, like they might not even know they're supposed to say the letters.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I've never tried that sort of A/B test approach in any of the sales work that I've done. And so the idea that I might sort of have a couple of different emails with a couple of different sort of ideas would be really useful. And I must confess, in the hour before this call, I was actually writing a sales email. And Catherine, that the sales email I'm working on, because I posted it to the How Good Humans Sell community, but and got great feedback as well. I appreciate that. But I asked ChatGPT to rewrite it for me.
Yeah, how'd it go?
To see how different it would be from what I'd come up with. And it's irritatingly different and annoyingly better than the one I came up with. Now, I then said,
oh, I can't wait to see it.
And then I said, can you give me the subject line? And it said, well, here's 5 examples. And I said, well, of the 5, which one do you think's the best? And they said, well, and ChatGPT is so humble. It says, well, I think they're all good, but this one is the one I would pick. And so I am be able to do an A/B test, because I've got the email that I created, and then I've got the email version that ChatGPT created. So, and I will follow your A/B testing, see what comes out of that. That'd be fascinating.
Drew, I want to say one more quick thing. I know we're coming pressed on time.
Yeah.
I want to mention one more quick thing. If someone is literally just getting started and they're like, I don't have a source of referrals, I need to build my confidence. I feel like this goes to the building any business is tough part, and selling coaching is strange. I want to say that there's nothing wrong with you racking up a few clients that you serve for free or very inexpensively. You make it be, you're like blood brother secret here. They won't tell people what they paid you, but you say, I need testimonies and I need to practice. And you go to friends, you go to people, former colleagues, former boss, former whomever that, you feel like you could ask and get some practice, so that then when the person says, well, where have you had success before? You go, yeah, I just last week, so-and-so shared this about their experience. And now you have a real testimony.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know that they didn't pay $400 an hour for that, right? They don't know that, but it builds your confidence. And that's what I did. The community that I now charge $400 a month for weekly classes, when I first started it in May of 20, the first people paid $49 a month.
Yeah.
They paid $49 a month. They paid $12 a week.
Yeah.
But it was the beginning of COVID, and I was just getting started, and I just needed people to say yes. And I said, I'll honor this price for 2 months. Would you go first? So as I market and new people come in, it looks like there's people in the room.
Yeah.
And they said, sure.
And
now I charge $400 a month for that.
And I think that's hugely valuable, because I think there is this idea that you shouldn't give it away. But of course, when you're building the business and getting started, then
you have to practice.
You do what needs to be done. Right. we are going to
Love to
wrap up because we're at
practice.
time. Created these QR codes for you. So if you want to connect with Catherine on LinkedIn, that's that QR code. And if you are interested in the community, then you can connect with the code on the right. I cannot emphasize enough, get Catherine's book, How Good Humans Sell, from Amazon. It's available Kindle, it's available paperback. It is a massive leap forward, a great way to get started in understanding this idea that sales doesn't have to be cheesy, to borrow Catherine's terminology, that it's about who you are and it's about connecting with people. Catherine, what do you want to add about the things that you do?
Thank you so much. Well, I really want to encourage you, if you have even the mildest interest in seeing this community of entrepreneurs who are sellers, this code on the right for the How Good Humans Sell community, that's what I was referring to. That is weekly. Every Wednesday, I teach live for an hour, and it's like this where I'm talking, but actually, instead of Drew asking me the questions, other people ask questions. So I teach through a lesson, and then we interact around. It's very interactive. You can visit for free. There's no commitment. If you sign up and visit, then you'll be in an email that will invite you to come back and invite you to buy, but you're not obligated to. And we're not high pressure because we're good humans. So come check it out if you have any curiosity about it, because it's very heavy in a consultant and professional services space. I think you would feel like you had a lot of kindred spirits there, and it's just such a sweet group of people. So
yeah, and I am a member of that community, and I go to as many meetings as I can. If I'm not busy doing something else, I am always there. So I would love to see some of your faces in that community as well. Catherine's offer is legit. Like, just show up. We have people do it all the time. They often become members because there's so much value in there. Okay.
thanks, Drew. Yeah. And of course, LinkedIn is my place of choice. And if you connect there, my email address is in my contact information. You can send me direct questions, and I really look forward to connecting with people and appreciate you coming.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate coming and spending time with us today. I hope you found this valuable. If you have, let us know. We'll try and do more things like this in the future, and I hope to see you down the road at some point. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks.
See ya. Bye-bye.